Hello, everyone. I'm Katherine Timpf, along with Eric Bolling and Eboni K. Williams. We are the Fox News Specialists. A new deadline for Senate Republicans' health care bill. After delaying a health care vote yesterday, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is now pushing to get a new health care deal in place Friday. That's after 9 Republican senators have now expressed opposition to the original legislation. President Trump sounded an optimistic note on the bill's future this afternoon.
We're working very hard. We've given ourselves a little bit more time to make it perfect. That's what we want to do. I think this has a chance to be a great health care at a reasonable cost. People can save a lot of money. We get rid of the mandates. We get rid of so much. Got rid of a lot of the taxes. All of the bad parts of Obamacare are gone. Essentially, it's a repeal and replace. And I look forward to working with the Republican senators over a short period of time.
What they're doing is tough because good health care, reasonable cost. But when you add some of these extra things for free, the prices are going to go up for everyone else. You can't deny that.
I love that first line of your read. You said it was a deadline that was approaching on Friday because the leadership, Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, put a deadline on it. Think about what that means for a second. It's 1/6 of the American economy, over $1 trillion per year at stake. And the leader of the Senate, who doesn't have the votes to pass it now, is putting a 2-day deadline on and fixing something so important. They really need to take time, put that aside for a while, get on to the other things, tax reform, infrastructure, hit healthcare later.
I really wish they would listen to you, Eric, because honestly, that makes the most sense when the president says a little bit of a deadline. I mean, my goodness, 2 more days. I don't know how you're going to get very far right parts of the GOP and very kind of moderate parts that have their own issues with this thing anywhere close to the same page in a matter of 48 hours.
My prediction is you're not.
Okay.
You're not going to be able to
I'm going to put my money on that, Kat.
Yeah.
I would bet on that, too. I'll put my money on Kat.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's meet today's specialists. He is a former college football player, a 20-year Wall Street veteran, and a member of the Trump Hispanic Advisory Council. But he specializes in defending President Trump against the mainstream media. Steve Cortes is here. And he's a former police officer, a Hollywood writer, and a former FBI counterterrorism agent. And he specializes in ending the careers of criminals. Tim Clemente is here. All right, healthcare. I feel like we're talking about this forever. We've been talking about this for 7 years. I feel like they should have had something by now.
Right. No, and should have and have to, by the way. I really believe this. The American people gave a mandate to the Republican Party by giving them both houses of Congress and the White House. They gave the kids the keys to the car. All right. The car has to get out of the garage and it's got to get into gear. And if it doesn't, by the way, I think the consequences in 2018 for the Republican Party will be dire, and they should be, quite frankly.
I think they'll be more dire if they do push something.
Right. Well, but they're
through.
taking their 4th of July vacation still. I mean, are they going to find the answers inside of a hot dog at a barbecue or what?
Can I address this? Let's address the politics of this for a second. Let's say they go ahead and take this deadline and somehow they twist enough arms, make enough backdoor deals that they get the votes to pass Trump care, health care. By the way, this isn't Trump care. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. They get the votes. They go to 2018. Through 2018, premiums are rising. Now the Democrats are tattooing the Republicans with a terrible health care problem. They own the problem right now as Democrats. Let them have it through the midterms.
Let me tell you this, though, Eric. You're right in that technically President Trump doesn't have anything to do with it. He cannot run away from it, though. The labeling is going to be there. This will be Trump care all day long to those that are not paying microscopic attention.
Yes, and for that reason, keep it Obamacare until you get through midterms, and then turn it into
Also, Eric, you are right that in some respects Trump doesn't own this because the Republicans, much before Donald Trump even got into politics, right, have been talking about repeal and replacing Obamacare. However, having said that, I believe the holy grail of the Trump movement is not health care, it's taxes.
Thank you.
And health care is going to make it easier, though, to get to tax cuts. And if we get to tax cuts, and we will, I believe, and this economy starts truly growing again, enough of this mediocrity of 1% and 2% growth, even if the health care bill isn't perfect at that point, I believe into 2018 and beyond, the American people are going to be so refreshed and invigorated and believing in the Trump movement.
You can get the tax care reform without health care reform first.
We can. Now, we can't make it permanent, but that's okay.
You say yes, we can?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I thought that's what I was going to say.
I'm going to get you in here real quick because I feel like yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect, maybe, but this has a lot of the same problems. And if this falls apart, we're going to have single payer.
Yeah, well, what Steve said, the analogy of this is giving the keys to the car to the kids. It's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off right now, though, because the way it's not so much the administration, but the leadership on the Hill is not pushing for what they said was going to be their signature thing once they had the House, the Senate, and the White House. And they're totally disjointed between the two sides of the House. The Republican Hill is falling. And the Republican leadership either needs to wake up and realize what the American people did put Donald Trump in the White House to do and allow him to take part in this process or show leadership.
100% accurate. Look what happened with the House bill and the Senate bill. Yeah. These are both leadership-generated bills, not the general population of either body of Congress.
No, I think in many ways this is really the swamp at its worst.
Exactly.
Somebody should write a book about the swamp. Anybody know anything about that?
Great idea.
It is the swamp at its worst. I really mean that because I believe a lot of Republicans, while they won't say this publicly, privately, they're okay with the status quo. They're okay with the tax code.
You think?
Generally, they're okay with health care. They really are. Sadly, I hate to say that.
Are you talking about Republicans on the Hill or Republicans?
Yes, on the Hill. No, on the Hill. Not voters.
I would agree.
Gosh, no,
yeah,
no,
certainly
Tim.
not voters.
Republicans on the Hill. But I'm saying that I don't think they still quite understand the electoral revolution that happened in this country in 2016. I don't think they understand the angst, the anger. I also don't think they understand the opportunity on the upside of what we can do in this country if we start growing again the way we did in the 80s and the 90s, and we can get there. I still am confident we will.
Perhaps there's still resentment, though, Steve, around the fact that when you put 17 Republicans on the stage, the one that didn't represent the status quo, the one that didn't really kind of come from their fabric, is the one that prevailed. And so as an outsider looking into the party, maybe there's still some resentment or something, or certainly at least a lack of understanding, right, Tim, around that issue.
Absolutely. I think because he's an outsider, I mean, Donald Trump is not a politician, and Donald Trump is president because he's not a politician. I think those are two clear facts that everybody can agree on. And I believe on the Hill especially, those people that are part of the swamp are also part of the country club. And now you have a guy that came into the country club over the wall, through the fence, and drove his pickup truck across the
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because I don't necessarily think that the people who are opposed to the health care bill specifically are opposed because they resent Trump. I think that they are a little more strict in terms of being small government conservatives. I think that their records dictate that that's what it's about.
Except for the ones that want to spend more on Medicare.
Now, except for, again, except for in some cases, people who have become more liberal. But I'm saying the majority, we're talking about the Pauls and the Lees and the Cruzes.
But
that's got nothing to do with a personal vendetta.
If they go ahead and try and appease the Pauls and the Lees and the Ted Cruzes,
then the moderates are going to want to get out.
Can we just take it around? Let's play politics for 5 minutes here. Let's say they do put the health care agenda, strategy aside for now. Then they push through, and this is important, Eboni, because they push through tax reform, which the Republicans love, but then tie it to infrastructure, which the Democrats love. So now you have two major plans that could go forward, and guess what? Healthcare doesn't happen, but you have both sides of Congress saying we got to win out of this. And how does that not make sense?
It's a major win in both ways, because the two things that you're talking about, both the economy and the infrastructure, are things that Donald Trump are saying are related, because he wants private investment in infrastructure. Well, guess what? If you allow tax cuts that allow more people to have more cash freed up, then those people, especially the ones that can afford to join into infrastructure, are the ones that can and will. And
well,
so
Eric,
it's an incentive.
You're talking about putting actual points on the board. That's what your proposal will do, I think.
Major points. We're not talking about an extra point or a safety.
No.
We're talking, a touchdown,
with a two-point
pick six.
Yeah, and instead of that, I think people are thinking, oh, the political payoff for finally repealing and replacing. That's been the establishment and the party's big promise. But you're right, that's different than Donald Trump's big promise.
How is that? Steve, how is that not a win for everyone?
I think it is a win, and my guess is if this doesn't happen quickly, healthcare, I think that will be the plan of the White House. I don't know that, but I believe that will be the plan, and it probably should be. I would also say this. It is so important. The lack of growth underlies so many of the problems facing our country. So many. I think the division we have, the anxiety in the country, opioid abuse, so many things are from a lack of growth, a lack of opportunity. What will most induce growth and compel growth? Tax cuts. We have to get to tax cuts.
I'll never understand why they didn't start there. Instead of going with health care when they don't even know what they want to do with it.
Political seduction. They were
Here's why.
Well, it doesn't seem to be making them look very good politically now.
Tim will confirm this. Here's why. Paul Ryan guaranteed, he went to the White House and said, I have health care. I have our body ready to vote on health care. They're on board. They're in favor of it. And he was wrong. Yep. And so he put the presidency in the crosshairs for the Democrats. He's the reason why they started there. They never should have. You're 100% right.
Yeah, they have no idea what they're doing. And when you talk about the vote now, it's this centering around this vote of got to get this out before vacation. Got it. Sorry, but this is disgusting.
Yeah, it drives
That's
me
disgusting. You need to say got to get this out because this is so good that we need this for the American people. That's not what I'm hearing.
Well, and by the
I'm
way,
hearing we got to get this out because I have to go to my family barbecue. I don't care about that.
They don't deserve a break.
Right.
They don't deserve a
I
trip to
agree.
the golf course. They don't deserve a trip to the beach. I wrote an article about this on Real Clear Politics. If you don't get these things done, no vacation. Who takes August off? I don't take all of August. What are we, Europeans? I mean, we don't take all of August off. The Congress should absolutely, and if the leadership has any real backbone, and if they actually care about what the people said in 2016, the Hill leadership will say, no break. It'll be like a high school lock-in. Nobody's getting out of here.
Right.
You're locked in.
Because when they were trying to get votes, they kept saying this is so important. This is the most important. And now it's like, okay, but not as important as my cheeseburger on the firework, you know. It's so disingenuous.
You know what it is, Kat? I think they expected people to fall in party line and that everybody was going to rally around this in some cohesive way, and that's not happening. People are looking back at their constituents in various points and saying, you know what, I'm going to be accountable and I'm going to be the one to pay a price, and they're not going for it.
There's no leadership.
Can I give you another theory that floats,
Please.
which I actually ascribe to? The leadership on both sides, the House and the Senate, are establishment, old school Republicans that have been there for forever. Who were the anti-Trumpers leading up to it?
That's what I'm saying.
Old school establishment Republicans.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't put it past them to say, hey, look, you know,
But you think
he
this is
wants to drain
sabotage?
us.
You don't think this is sabotage?
I honestly think that
It's a lack of
I
leadership.
think that could be part of it. I
I mean,
think
you
that
look at
could be a lot
James
of it.
Mattis at DOD. Look at the leadership he provides. He comes out, he says things, the military backs up behind him. There's no commander that ever counters what James Mattis says. There's nobody linearly up and down the whole line of chain of command. That's leadership. You don't have that behind Ryan. You don't have that behind Mitch McConnell.
And the
Do not
rest,
have
Steve,
it.
am I wrong that leadership
No,
on
listen,
both sides?
As I said, and I hate to say this as a lifelong Republican, I've never voted for anybody but a Republican. I think they're okay secretly with the status quo. But having said that, before we work ourselves into too much of a negative tizzy here, it is going to get done. I do believe that. And through Trump's leadership, it's ugly to watch the hour-by-hour process, day by day of legislation. It's ugly. It's inefficient. It's supposed to be to some degree in a democracy. We're going to get there. We're going to get health care. We're going to get tax cuts. The future is bright.
We'll see. All right. Well, the House is set to vote on 2 big-ticket bills to crack down on illegal immigration. Will Kate's law into funding sanctuary cities finally come to pass? Right back with it.
This week, House Republicans are expected to follow through on promises to crack down on undocumented immigrants with votes on 2 major pieces of legislation, Kate's Law and a bill on defunding sanctuary cities. Now, both bills have received strong support from President Trump, who met with victims of immigration crimes this afternoon.
I'm especially honored to be here with so many courageous families whom I did get to know so well over the past period of time. You lost the people that you love because our government refused to enforce our nation's immigration laws, and that's even the existing immigration laws. For years, the pundits, journalists, politicians in Washington refused to hear your voices. But on election day, 2016, your voices were heard all across the entire world, right? You better believe it. Nobody died in vain, I can tell you.
Okay, Eric, he has to start this way. This is brilliant. We all know about the tragedy of 32-year-old Kate Steinle being killed in San Francisco by a not only undocumented, 7-time felon, deported 5 times, yet coming back to this country. But this is what I want to pivot to on this. Most Democrats have been resist this entire Trump administration. However, on this issue, Kate's Law in particular, you've got a Democratic congressman saying Kate's Law is more complicated, and I'm encouraging everyone to look at it and reach their own conclusion. So this is one space that even they are getting, that resist will not work, because this is humanizing this issue in a way that we really haven't seen done before.
And so you have 2 issues, Kate's Law, which you point out. If you've been deported, if you commit a crime, you've been deported, you come back and you get caught a second time, you spend mandatory 5 years in jail. Yep. That's a deterrent, I think, that we can all wrap our brains around. Here's the thing, as a Democrat, Do you vote against something like that?
That's what I'm saying. I don't
And
think
how do you?
many of them can because of the human nature of this, Steve. This is
Right.
connected not just to policy and going up at 30,000 feet. This is on the ground. Everyone knows the narrative of the crying, broken apart families from people being deported. But what about the families that are
Right.
broken apart because someone killed their loved one who should have never been here in the first place?
And unfortunately broken apart for good. I care a lot about this story, and this theme. As an Hispanic, I spoke on it a ton during the campaign for Donald Trump because, by the way, this is another irony here is the left tries to paint Donald Trump because of his assault on sanctuary cities and crackdown on dangerous illegal aliens as though he's somehow anti-Hispanic. Well, the victims are often Hispanic of these dangerous people. For instance, another terrible case in California is a woman named Sandra Duran, wonderful legal immigrant, wife, mother, who was killed by a similar story by somebody who had been deported 5 times already.
How about most recently in the news in the Washington, D.C. area, just last week, Nabra Hassanan, a 17-year-old girl, Muslim girl, during Ramadan, goes to break the fast with friends of hers, riding their bikes and walking to a place to eat a block away from their mosque when an illegal immigrant with a baseball bat ends up beating her, sexually molesting her, and then dumping her dead body in a pond.
Right.
And that's a person, this family now, basically Ramadan has ended on Sunday, and it's like their Christmas. The Eid has now come, and this poor family is suffering. They're immigrants. They're suffering because of an illegal immigrant who is a criminal illegal immigrant.
Yeah. I guess I would just like to see, and none of these are things that can be argued against. I would like to see where the funding for it will come from, because there's already a huge amount of federal resources that goes towards people who are deported and re-enter, but only a small percentage of them are actually prosecuted because they don't have the resources.
Right.
And in terms of 5 years not being enough, I'm not sure if you get kicked out and your family's still there. I don't know if 5 years might be worth the risk to you. Certainly, I have questions about how this will look implemented. I certainly have no qualms about wanting to punish people who come here illegally and then commit a crime. I don't have any sympathy for you. It's not that hard to not go to jail. I've managed to never do it, and I have a very good time.
But that's very good.
It's
Very good.
really not
That's
that
very
hard.
good.
Also, here's the good news, is that since taking office in just 6 months, mostly just through rhetoric, frankly, Donald Trump has largely secured our border. ICE tells us that that illegal crossings are already down 70% year over year. I mean, that's what leadership can do.
Can you imagine if there was a, and by the way, we're talking about repeat criminal offenders.
These are super
Aside from the
violent
fact that they break the law when they come out, I'm talking about violent
Well,
criminals.
you know, wait, Eric,
who can push back on that?
I completely agree, but this is where I do think some of these dueling narratives come into play. I think, you know, I've been very consistent. You are a violent criminal. You have no place in our American fabric. However, those that their only crime is coming here illegally, and that's still a crime. Absolutely, to the letter of the law it is. But I think there's something to be said for prioritizing who gets out first. But I want to ask you about something else, Eric, and that's the other legislation that's proposed, the sanctuary cities. Now, a lot of people have mixed feelings on this one. It's not as clear-cut as Kate's law. Some people say an unintended consequences of the sanctuary city issue is people will not report violent crime or other crime as much because they are nervous about being deported if they do. Your answer to that?
I'm probably a little bit towards the left of most conservatives on this. I wanted to see, well, here's the thing. There's not that much funding currently for sanctuary cities. They're earmarking some very small dollar amounts that we end up paying sanctuary municipalities, cities, for holding criminals, for the process.
Right.
In other words, that's the only
The detainment,
drawback.
all that. Yeah,
If you
yeah.
wanted to go hardcore, pull back highway funding. Pull back other types of federal funding to these states that harbor sanctuary cities.
Well,
That's
I hate the term sanctuary for whom? I mean, sanctuary for the criminal, not for the victim, right? So, you know, I live in Chicago, which is supposedly a sanctuary city. Rahm Emanuel spends more time talking about sanctuary cities than he does solving the very real violence issues on the west side of our city.
By the way, it's only conveniently now a sanctuary city that the demographic shows that that would support him. That's very interesting.
But I'm not even sure it does, by the way, because Hispanics, this is interesting, a Zogby poll recently, twice as many Hispanics, legal Hispanics,
They're legal, yeah.
twice as many legal Hispanics think that our immigration enforcement is too lax as compared to
Well, because they've
stringent.
done it the right way
Exactly.
and stood in the line and got their term. So on that, straight ahead, Sarah Palin slapping the New York Times with a defamation lawsuit over a botched editorial. How strong is her case? We'll tackle it moments away.
When you wanna have a late night drive-by and jump down my phone around midnight, say you miss me waking up by your side, act like you don't, like you don't.
Check that out. This young man just showed up with a poster How cool is that? I'm so happy for that guy. That's so cool. Thank you very much, pal. All right, Sarah Palin is taking on the New York Times, hitting the paper with a defamation lawsuit. Earlier this month, it published an editorial falsely linking her to the 2011 shooting of then Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, which the paper later corrected. The Times editorial came after this month's shooting of House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. But can Governor Palin prove the Times purposely published false information to defame her? Let's go with Eboni first. Defamation is a false statement that damages someone's good name and reputation, but this is on the editorial page, and editorial is opinion, and God save us if we're going to start holding opinion at that level.
Brilliant analysis, Eric Bolling. Yeah, there are certain defenses and opinions, one of them. The other one can be retraction. You know, they called themselves out at some point because they knew that she hadn't done this, by the way, when they said that. They put in the retraction. So I do think legally this will be difficult for her. I expect a settlement of some sort, and this should go away.
Now, what do you think, Kat? They left it up for quite a while on the website, though.
Yeah, I also feel like you have to have a special kind of mental defect to sit down and write a piece about a Bernie bro shooting a Republican congressional leader and have it somehow turn out to be a smear piece about Sarah Palin. How does that even happen? What is wrong with you? If you're going to publish something that serious, an accusation that serious, try Google first. Spend a little time on the Google and make sure that you're right.
That's the amazing thing. It's the laziness. I think it's not just the left has a Trump derangement, which I think they do, or an anti-right derangement. It's the pure laziness of it. A simple Google would have shown them that this is not the case.
Tim, do you remember the 2011 piece that it blew up right away? It was during a campaign, and what Sarah Palin did was she put House seats that were available to Republicans if they could win, and she put a circle. It looked like a target, I'll be honest with you, but why wouldn't you target a district?
Yeah, exactly. They were targeted districts for the Republicans, and that's completely different than putting a crosshair on Gabby Giffords' forehead, as a lot of the left media did when that story came out. And the problem with this story is exactly what Eboni just said. They knew it was not true when they published it. Unfortunately, that's what Sarah Palin would have to prove in court in order to win a defamation suit like this, because their intent is what matters. The effect isn't what matters. It's their intent in doing it.
That's exactly right. And look, again, I think their intent was suspect at best. But again, the fact that they did put the retraction in, it was the editorial page, as Eric points out. I don't think there's just a slam dunk case for her. But look, I think the New York Times' credibility has been damaged so tremendously for the past 18 months, and this doesn't help.
And Eboni, I think that's what's more important. She probably doesn't win legally. I'm not a lawyer like you, but I don't think she can win legally. But the more important thing, I think, is that we're making a point to the American people that, by the way, when Trump says fake news, he's not lying. This has been a very good week for Trump in that regard, between this lawsuit, between CNN, between what Project Veritas has shown us about CNN. This wasn't a paranoia on Trump's part. Okay, there is fake news out there, and there is such antagonism and laziness in the mainstream media that they will go to almost any means, even disingenuous ones, to try to make the president and his allies look bad.
Can we, producers, can you throw up that Bernie side if you can? If you can get to it, great. If you can't, let me know. But in the meantime, Kat, so let's give the New York Times. Let's do this. Take a listen to this. I think you referenced something to this effect. Listen.
My wife is about the most honest person I know. It is a sad state of affairs in America, not only when we have, politicians being destroyed, when there are attacks against elected officials, when you go after your wife, people's wives, that is pretty pathetic.
Yeah, but she did something wrong.
Yeah, I think
she's alleged to have done something wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a completely different thing, right? Than just going after some random. Well, we'll see what happens. I don't know.
That's different than what happened to Ted Cruz's wife during the primary.
It's completely different. They're looking into it. They're investigating something. I don't know if it's true or not.
It's a misdirect.
But it's different than just randomly insulting somebody.
Of course, right? What do you mean his wife? They're not making fun of her or,
they're not.
or calling out some physical thing about her. They're saying she's under investigation for doing something wrong.
Yeah, and this happens. I mean, there's stories about the FBI this week. Andy McCabe, the acting director of the FBI, his wife having gotten funds from the governor of Virginia, who was a very big Clinton ally, and he's responsible for the investigation of Hillary Clinton.
So the lesson is we have to vet our spouses much more carefully. I mean, certainly. I mean, you got to look at poor Huma Abbott, and she's still paying the price for that she married.
I think the bigger point here is the hypocrisy of Bernie Sanders, right? If his wife did what is alleged, it shows that they sure were pretty darn greedy, right, for people who claim they don't care about money. He has 3 homes. He's made a ton of money off of book sales. To me, it's the hypocrisy, and even more so, by the way, if I'm going to throw a stone at him, it's for Why is he not speaking out against the DNC now that he has full knowledge that they colluded in every single way against him? How are he and his supporters not irate over that?
Eboni,
how did they sell out?
Very quickly, we only have a couple of seconds, but how? Why did Bernie Sanders' wife sign for the loan that they were both going to use at the house, other than to shield him?
Oh, that's exactly why, because she wanted to assume that liability to be detached from his political aspirations.
Of course he loves money.
Everybody
Who doesn't love money?
Yeah, he's in the public
he
eye.
won't say
So
Yeah, except the socialists.
I love money.
They love it.
He loves everyone's
the better.
money. That's what it is.
socialism only works academically.
He likes your money.
Yeah.
Well, right.
He loves your money. All right. The commander of the U.S. forces in the Pacific delivering an ominous warning over ISIS and its new campaign to establish beachheads in East Asia. Don't go away.
Welcome back to the Fox News Specialist. Our specialists today are Steve Cortes and Tim Clemente. We will continue the conversation. Admiral Harry Harris, the commander of U.S. forces in the Pacific, sounding the alarm about ISIS's campaign to seize new territory. During remarks in Australia, the admiral warning ISIS is aggressively trying to establish fresh beachheads across East Asia, and that brazen offensives by ISIS-linked militants in the Philippines should be a wake-up call for the entire region. Eric, we kind of, have been seeing this coming now. We talk about the whack-a-mole process. We see ISIS being pushed out in some places, only to now pop up here in South Asia.
Let me take a little different tact on that. That sounded horrible. It's actually good news for the United States. That ISIS is saying, we're looking to Asia, we're looking to expand into areas that we haven't been before, instead of saying, hey, we're focusing on getting our, remember a year ago they were saying, we're going to infiltrate the refugee program into the United States, do everything you can, kill Westerners, kill Americans if you can.
Right.
It's a different tact for them. And maybe, just maybe, they're seeing some of the initiatives that Trump is establishing as a deterrent to them trying to waste their resources here.
Okay.
Or they want to go to that area and then come over here from there because they're not covered by the travel ban there.
I don't think they're stopping what they were doing initially. The problem with ISIS and the problem with that ideology is it's just that, an ideology. And it's a disease that can be spread. It's airborne. It can be spread through the internet, unlike any other disease. And it's a disease that you cannot stop. There is no cure for it, and no known cure now. And the problem is they're beachheads in East Asia. Well, we have beachheads in East Asia, so they will be infiltrating into American commerce through those beachheads in East Asia, and that's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, so that's true, that the social media and the digital possibilities for this growing really anywhere in the world still remains prevalent.
No, and I think to your point, what we have to try to do is, and it's a long process, is defeat them ideologically, right? Not just on the battlefield. That's important too, of course, in protecting citizens through things like the travel ban, which was never a Muslim ban. It's a travel ban. And
so
it's
not even when the president called it a Muslim ban?
No, it's not.
Okay, just checking.
It's sensible policy. But I would say this too.
Wait, was
that Spicer?
Yeah, wasn't that the original? Didn't they fix that?
Yeah,
Right,
they
no, he
did.
did the campaign, and then he switched it. That was proposed, and then it was never enacted. And, candidates can evolve. But I think this is important, too, the fact that the Philippines is in this story, because the president took a lot of heat for supposedly having a very friendly phone call with Duterte, with their leader, who, by most reports, is a pretty reprehensible guy. But the point is here, guess what? You know who's more reprehensible? Is ISIS.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently they are beheading people. There's sex slavery going on in the areas of the Philippines they control. I mean, just the worst things you can imagine. So guess what? We can occasionally partner with a bad guy to beat a worse guy.
The pushback, Steve, pushback, as you well know, wasn't that he was cohorting with Duterte. It was that one China policy was that phone call was a diss to China.
Right. No, and look, and there's always competing interests, right, in the Pacific. But my point is, at times, we can ally ourselves with somebody who we may not love, who we may not want to introduce to mom, but who can serve a purpose, particularly in defeating.
It's not that we
Point
can.
taken.
We have
Point taken. We're going to now get to this because I really want to. Defense Secretary James Mattis is claiming a U.S. threat to Syria's Bashar al-Assad has worked. According to the U.S., the regime has appeared was appearing ready to conduct a new chemical weapons attack, but Mattis is telling reporters that the Syrian government, quote, didn't do it. It appears they took the warning seriously. I wanted to get to this so badly, Eric, because it goes to what you just said, right? Like, it's almost as if the wording alone is impactful.
That's very optimistic, and I love the idea that the day after the warning was given, we're declaring it all clear.
You said don't do it, and they didn't do it. I mean, that's what Mattis is saying.
Listen, I hope they're smart enough. I hope Bashar al-Assad's smart enough not to do it. But again, this is one of those things where I just say, not our fight.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
It may not be our fight, but when you have a clear line in the sand and then you allow that line in the sand to be erased, not by wind, but by violence, and you do nothing about it, I think the clear difference here, James Mattis speaks, people believe what he says.
Right. Now, once you've declared it's your fight, it's important. But I agree with you. I don't see a compelling American interest in Syria. I just don't. But I do love that rhetoric seems to matter. With clear-eyed rhetoric from this administration, I would compare this to our southern border, for instance, where, again, he has already largely secured the border just through clear speaking and warnings.
So then doesn't that mean we don't need the wall now, Steve?
Well,
I mean, since the border's so secure now, I mean, these illegal immigrants are so down.
We can't count on that long term.
Well, there's still 30% that we can cut off. It's only a 70% reduction.
Okay, I understand.
It wasn't
So
just words. There was also those 59 missiles, which I'm not really cool with, because that was an active war that didn't get congressional approval.
Yeah. So that's the thing. The president, with his interview, we saw some of this yesterday with Eric, said, you know, he's not going to put a red line, and certainly not put a red line to then not cross it. But I do feel, to Kat's point, we have seen the president say pretty definitively that he's not going to sit idly by while Assad just kills and gasses his own people.
He's got to stop by Congress and have them all talk about that and vote on it first, because that's the way the Constitution works.
I think our clear interest in that region, and in Syria in particular, is that we do not want a vacuum created. We do not want another vacuum like happened in Iraq and allowed ISIS to grow. Syria is obviously a birthplace for them.
What's wrong with a Syria that's run by Bashar al-Assad and a Russia that stops Bashar al-Assad from killing his own people? If you have peace in Syria run by Assad with Russia as an ally,
I mean, it's great for us. It's great for America to want to have influence in that region and in that country in particular, but it's not wrong for other countries to be more influential there. And I agree with you. If it can be stabilized and the people there are protected from violence from their own government and from outside forces like ISIS, which comes from everywhere,
but
so
Eric,
be it.
you think Russia's going to do that?
I would hope so.
Okay.
I mean, I prefer that over us getting involved in the middle of that.
From your mouth to God's ears, certainly. Up next, though, it's time to wake up America. Eric Bolling is fired up over new reports on the Obama administration's handling of the Russian hacking threat. Stay with us.
Yeah, slum national, underground, thunderbounds, and I stomp the ground like a million elephants, a silverback orangutan. You can't stop a train. Who wants some? Don't come unprepared. I'll be there, but when I leave there, better be a household name. Weatherman telling us it ain't gonna rain.
All right, time to wake up America. Russia, Russia, Russia. Listen to Democrats long enough and you think Russia had some sort of deal with President Trump. But what's really behind the Democrats' and heavily left-leaning media obsession with Russia? Is it a visceral hate for Trump? Or are they really concerned about Russia meddling in our politics? Surely President Obama, who's been highly critical of his successor, President Trump, and Russia, surely he thinks Russia is dangerous, right?
A few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, you know, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
So, Mr. Obama, Russia wasn't even on your radar 4 years into your presidency. Well, maybe that's so long ago. Eventually, surely you must have changed your mind over time about Russia's meddling in our elections, right? Listen to President Obama just last year.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past or that there are instances in which that will happen this time.
Uh-oh. So what is it, liberals? Is it really Russia, or is it some sort of Trump derangement syndrome at work? CNN had to retract a story claiming Trump transition team member Anthony Scaramucci was colluding with the Russians. That story was fake news, and 3 CNNers were forced to resign for that error. Maybe there's a rush to Russia, a Russia to judgment, so to speak. Whatever's motivating the left's enamourment with the Russia story, it must be really important. Well, unfortunately for my good friend, the very liberal Van Jones, just got caught on camera declaring Russia a, quote, nothing burger. Now, Van, I couldn't agree with you more on this one. Clearly a nothing burger. Right, Eb?
I was going to say, I was like over here Google. I want to make sure I quote Van Jones correctly, and you beat me to it. Seriously, I think even some of the most democratic far-left people are having Russia fatigue. Seriously, I really think that's where we are. We see the updates every day. People are tired of the money. Where is the smoking gun? And frankly, at this point, I'm more concerned with tax reform. I'm more concerned with a health care plan that works and brings my premiums down. And if there's something to Russia, then we'll hear about it when we get to it.
Kat, what do you think? Let me get to Kat. Those two sound bites were 4 years apart. One 4 years into President Obama's presidency and one at the very end of his presidency.
Right.
Claiming both times, nothing to see here on Russia.
Right. Democrats only care about potential hacking when it has maybe political implications, not about how it affects the country. This whole thing is just so emblematic of what's going on in this country right now with the hyper-partisanship. It's so much of, he did it, oh no, they did it, and not, oh, what can we do about it? Because a foreign entity getting involved into our elections is bad.
And Kat, I think to your point, the complete lack of self-awareness. If I were a Democrat, I think I would hope I would be saying to myself, holy cow, not only did we lose the presidency, but under the past administration, we lost 1,000 state legislature seats. I mean, that's unprecedented, something that hasn't been seen since the Civil War in this country. There are 25 states now where the Republicans have total control. The governorship, both houses of Congress, only 6 for the Democrats. But despite the fact that they're a party in systemic national decline, there seems to be an utter lack of self-awareness, and it's easier to create this Russia scapegoat.
When you say self-awareness, you mean not aware of the fact that Russia's that effective, that they were able to give the Republicans that much power in so many states? I mean, it's the thing that's really ridiculous about this is that if anybody has to worry about collusion, it's the Democrats right now. Loretta Lynch, as the Attorney General, meeting with targets of investigations, including Bill Clinton. The fact that the head of the FBI, James Comey, has to tank a case because he knows that there's no prosecution possible across the street at the Department of Justice. Those are things internally that are very scary.
I want to circle back to something you said, Stephen. This is some hard truth that many in the Democratic Party are not going to want to hear, but it's the truth nonetheless. They lost state legislature seats. They lost governors. They lost House seats, senator seats. People liked Barack Obama. They liked Barack Obama. They didn't necessarily like the policies, didn't necessarily like the party. And actually, President Obama was on record as saying that he was not really concerned with the growth and survival of the party. He was concerned with his presidency. So now the Democrats have to realize Barack Obama is gone and he's not coming back. Seriously.
He's not coming back through that door.
He's not coming back through that door.
No.
So now you need to get yourself together, get a message, and find a messenger if you intend to be relevant politically moving forward. And that's the truth.
I think you're exactly right. And as much as I didn't like his policies, I'll be the first to admit he was a transformational figure. The fact that America elected a black president a few generations away from black people being owned is incredible for him, incredible for the country. His charisma, his political skills were absolutely stellar. I'll be the first to concede that. But he's done. He's done. And he's done. And what are they left with now? They're left with a bunch of cranky old people who don't care about growth in this country.
Want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's hard to not like Barack Obama. I would love to hang out with him after work. I'm sure he has plans, but he seems like a fun guy. But again, very different from the Democrats. They're like a shell of a party without him.
Right, can we be optimistic and say maybe the CNN story, everyone in the mainstream media learned their lesson, do your homework, stop rushing to judgment?
Oh, hopefully.
Maybe.
It's the beginning to the end of Russia.
All right, we got to go, but a quick reminder, check out my new book, The Swamp, available everywhere. It's popping back and forth between number 2 and number 3 on Amazon's bestseller list. Very, very happy about that. And a huge, huge thank you to everyone who helped achieve that early success. Thank you. And when we return, we circle back with our specialists, Steve Cortes and Tim Clemente.
Time to circle back with our specialists, Steve Cortes and Tim Clemente. All right, you were very optimistic about healthcare getting done.
I am.
At some point, I wanted to ask you, when do you think that'll actually happen?
Kat, it better get done after the July 4th break, which they shouldn't be taking, but they are, and before the August break, which again they shouldn't be taking if it's not done. But no, I really do. I don't think I'm just being Pollyanna here. I will say this about Mitch McConnell. I agree with him. I disagree with him a lot on policy. He's a master parliamentarian. I think he knows how to get this done, even if it's a little ugly, and get that through in between those two breaks. And if we do that, once we do that, then we move on to tax reform, to tax cuts, which again is the holy grail. This country has to grow again. And if we start growing, so many other problems solve themselves.
Speaking of Pollyanna, Steve, I have a question for you. You are a proud Georgetown Hoya. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts on Patrick Ewing becoming the new head coach for your Hoya, and will they bring them back to basketball relevancy?
You know, listen, I think it's a great move. Needed to do something. Georgetown basketball has been pretty bad for a while. Not very proud. You say I'm a proud Hoya. I certainly am in terms of I loved playing sports, sir. The best things I learned were on the gridiron there, not in the classroom, because unfortunately Georgetown has become, like so many universities, an indoctrination camp for leftist
was it like
ideologies.
That when you were there?
It wasn't as bad as now, but yes, it was. So I'm sad to say that, but that's the reality.
Very quickly, Tim, I'm getting all these texts and emails saying that can I say this word? You're a badass out there. You're a badass. Are you still in the law enforcement security business, or have you changed field?
I don't think it's possible to take your at least 1 foot out of that field completely. So I still keep my my hands meddling in the counterterrorism world, especially. I travel around the world extensively, and I consult not only in Hollywood but around the world.
Well, thank you for that. We're glad you're on our side.
And I agree with Steve. Georgetown has become a cesspool. Having played at Fordham University myself. No, I'm talking about on the football field, not about in the classroom.
Nice
But upward and onward.
Yes.
All right.
Tax cuts and growth.
I agree.
All right. Well, thank you to our Fox News specialists today, Steve Cortes and Tim Clemente. We thank you all for watching. Make sure to follow us on social media at Specialist FNC on Twitter and Facebook. Remember, 5 o'clock will never be the same. Special Report is next, and it's amazing. Keep watching.